Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. This is Rhett here with Linda and Tyler to talk about a topic we covered a few weeks ago, actually, which was the Inflation Reduction Act that is going to be lowering the cost of really important prescription medications for people across the country, specifically targeting Medicare's ability to negotiate prices and price gouging from Big Pharma. And so the Biden administration released 10 drugs that this will be targeting first and foremost in terms of the price negotiations. And this is going to be something that helps 9 million people getting access to more affordable prescriptions that is important to them. And so this is certainly the start. And to talk about kind of the huge impact of this, I'm going to start by passing it to Linda, who can share what's going on with this, what's the impact, and what's going to be our next steps.
So as President Biden might say, this is a BFD. It's by far the biggest defeat that Big Pharma has ever suffered. And politicians have spent decades saying that they were going to let Medicare negotiate lower drug prices. Donald Trump even ran on doing it. And then, of course, absolutely did not as president. But Biden was the one to finally get it done. And it's going to start with 10 drugs, but that actually is a really big deal. 9 million Medicare beneficiaries take these drugs, and they spend $3.4 billion out of pocket on them. So that's a lot of people that are going to be saving money. So this is just the beginning. After this, there's going to be more new drugs added every year that Medicare can negotiate lower prices on. And within 10 years, it's going to be well over 100 drugs. And so this is just a huge change. It means that Big Pharma is just not going to be able to charge whatever they want for prescription drugs anymore. And it's a beginning. We have to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting until every person in America can get the prescription drugs that they need, no matter how much money is in their wallet. But this really is a huge day and the start of something big.
Yeah, this is such a big day. And I want to talk about, a couple weeks ago on the show, we, celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. And we talked about what a big deal it is. And this is like that coming to fruition. It's really showing this legislation truly has changed the game, and it's made things like this possible. So it feels a little full circle to be talking about this, 1-2 weeks later, about how big of a deal the Inflation Reduction Act is. And now to have this amazing list of drugs that are going to be able to be negotiated on Medicare and save millions of Americans tons and tons of money, while also putting Big Pharma on notice that they can't just keep charging people whatever they want anymore and putting their profits over people's health and safety. So yeah, that's the thing that I'm really excited about. We were just talking about how, sometimes it feels like it takes a long time to see the fruits of legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act. So it is so cool that literally almost a year to the day later, we are seeing one of the biggest impacts of this hallmark legislation.
Absolutely. And this is the same legislation that had the huge impact for addressing the climate crisis as well. The Inflation Reduction Act is very comprehensive in addressing these things that are so important to the American people. So as you both are saying, celebrating this 1-year mark and just to see the impact that this will have. Linda, we were talking a little bit before the show and found that the average savings for a senior accessing prescriptions is going to be about $400 a year. That is so immense, considering the scope that so many Americans cannot afford even a $500 emergency expense. To think about $400 in the pocketbooks of so many seniors across this country is a very significant thing. Certainly, it's a start. It is not the end goal. So it'll be exciting to see how, as more prescription drugs are continued to roll out under this coverage, under these renegotiations led by the Biden administration against Big Pharma's wishes, to see that money falling back into the pockets, staying in the pockets of seniors across America. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, against Big Pharma's wishes, so much that they've spent $400 million trying to stop the stay from happening, but it did anyway. They're, filing frivolous lawsuits in courts all over America. That's how desperate this is making Big Pharma. And I really think this is something, it's easy to be cynical about politics if you follow it, work in it, think, oh, nothing ever changes. And, the corporations always win in the end. But this shows that's not true. When we fight, we do have these big victories. Sometimes they're a long time coming. And, we always have to continue fighting and building on them. But we can win when the American people fight, when we come together and demand something, we can defeat these corporate interests.
That's such a good point, Linda. And it's also, it has me thinking, yeah, we've heard so much. We get a ton of lip service, right, from right wing politicians and Trump, like you mentioned, saying, oh, yeah, we definitely need to do something about drug prices. Meanwhile, we know that they're in the pockets of big pharma, in the pockets of these companies who have no incentives to make drug prices cheaper. And so I do wonder, what do the next steps of this fight look like? Now that we've got these 10 drugs, obviously we need to make sure we get another Biden presidency, another Democratic presidency to ensure all of this isn't rolled back. But is there anything else that we should be aware of to keep fighting for, keep doing? Do we need to talk to local politicians and organizations to ensure that we get more and not less as we keep moving forward?
Yeah, so I agree that a really big part of this is making sure that, that Democrats keep the White House and take control of Congress next year, because Republicans have already said that they plan to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act, including Medicare negotiation, and raise drug prices if they take back control of Washington. And then also, these lawsuits, they're on totally frivolous legal grounds, but we know that doesn't always stop Trump appointed justices, even at the Supreme Court, but that they have been learning, from what happened, the backlash to Roe, that when you do something that makes the American people really, really mad, Republicans will pay the price at the polls. And so I think we really need to rally support for these drug pricing reforms and make it clear to both Republican politicians and Republican judges that they are going to face the consequences if they mess with our lower drug prices. So that's part of it. I also think Pharma is going to keep lobbying to slow this down, to make it less drugs in future years. And so I think politicians from both parties really need to hear from us that we need to not just carry out the law as it's in the Inflation Reduction Act, but even build on it, move even faster, take executive actions to lower the price of drugs as well. And that we're going to keep watching. We're not just going to sit back and let this happen while Pharma keeps lobbying, that we are going to be actively monitoring our politicians to make sure that they actually listen to the will of the American people, which about 90% of people, including Republicans, support Medicare drug price negotiation, but not a single Republican member of Congress voted to make it law. So that just really shows they don't work for their voters, they work for their donors. And President Biden has already signaled he's going to make that a centerpiece of the re-election campaign, as he very well should be.
Yeah, I think that's so great to hear. And I also think it's important too that we all do our part. Everyone watching this and, on this show now likely knows someone who's on Medicare, is on Medicare, or will be on Medicare at some point in their lives. So it's really important that we talk about these things now as they're going into effect for people who might not be as plugged into the news cycle as we are. So people know these things and can expect these things so that they can, like we said, hold their politicians accountable. And, also, like we already know, the Inflation Reduction Act capped insulin at $35 a month, making sure we're still talking about that and ensuring that people who are impacted and insulin users are aware of that, and just continuing to, beat the drum from now through 2024 that we're not just talking about doing these things, we've done them and now we have to keep them. And I think that's really important. And, we can take our time to celebrate because this is a win. And I think we should, have a little parade for a bit.
I'm all about a parade, first of all, Tyler. And, as we're thinking about the 1-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, as Linda mentioned, there was not a single Republican in the House of Representatives or the Senate that voted to support this historic legislation that dealt with things like the climate crisis that helped lower these prescription drug prices. So pretty frightening stuff when we think about the road to the 2024 election. And, I always like to remind myself, the two-party system is super flawed, 1000%. As a progressive kind of space here on our channel, we are happy to admit that the Democratic Party might not be always the solution to our problems, but certainly when we think about the alignment over these core issues, I feel pretty good about the fight ahead when we think about the unity in the Democratic Party over certainly these policies. So I want to pass it over to both of you if you want to do any final thoughts. Otherwise, I think that this has been a pretty comprehensive episode. Linda, I know you are an expert on this, so I want to give you the final word on this. If there's anything you want to say before we close out.
Yeah, no, I would just say, as you said, Democratic Party, we're not afraid on this show to call out Democrats and President Biden when they do the wrong thing. But the other side of that is when they do the right thing, they, do deserve praise. And this is a day when we really do need to celebrate as well as keep buckling up for the fights ahead.
Absolutely. Tyler, Linda, thank you both so much for this conversation. All of our viewers at home, make sure you tell us what you think in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed, make sure you like, make sure you share this, and find us on TikTok and Instagram as well, because hey, let us stay connected, because as we talk about unity, let's stay connected as we look to the fight ahead in 2024. We'll be sure to keep you all updated on these important issues and so much more here at Progress America Unfiltered. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.